and welcome back. We are going today animate a portcullis here as another test of our skills here before we kind of merge everything in with our spreadsheet, because we are going to take this animation that we are now creating and eventually move that over into a spreadsheet. So of course, if you don't know what a portcullis is, it's this right here. It's this nice old gate feature that you see in a lot of things like castles and stuff like that. So we are going to go ahead and create this. Now, obviously, this is a little more detailed than what we can do, so ours doesn't have to be perfect like that. But let's just go ahead and create a new 128 by 128 image here. And actually today, I'm going to go ahead and fill it in with a background color. Let's just go ahead and fill that in with white just to get started. And I'm actually going to just leave that as a background here just for a minute. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. And of course, this is layer 1. And the reason why I'm going to do this is because I'm going to maybe want to color in and fill in everything else around this. And by leaving the background layer here, it automatically has filled this in with some detail. All right, and I can just hide that background for now. I can always revisit it if I need to. Control-0 to zoom in. And we're going to go ahead and get started by drawing this. Now, I'm, of course, a very small pencil tool right here, so I'm actually going to bring this up in size just a little bit. 3 pixels looks pretty good here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 1/2 of this because I want it to be mirrored. I want one side to reflect the other. So I'm just going to go ahead, start with a straight line to kind of get this started. And I'm just going to go ahead and try to make this about as good as I can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but that looks like a pretty good start right here for our arch that we would have here in this archway here. Then I'm going to use a little finagling with our selection tools here. So let's go ahead and select this shape here with our quick select tool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that. I want to make a copy of this here. So let's just right click and just do layer via copy. And of course now we have 2 layers here of this same shape. So I'm going to make sure I'm on layer 2. Let's go ahead and select that again, and let's go ahead and transform that, but let's go ahead and flip that. And so now we have that facing the other direction. So when I grab my move tool, I of course should be able to go ahead and click right on that shape and slide that into position. Go ahead and deselect, and you can see now we have one big shape. I want to merge these 2 layers here though, because I want this to be one thing. So I'm going to just go to layer 2, and I'm going to merge down. All right. I'm going to rename layer 1 to archway, just so that way I can keep track of what this is. And now we have, again, the start of our shape. Now I can add some other decorative pieces here, which I can do here in a second. But the most important thing to recognize is that this shape right here is going to have our gate underneath here, and we're going to have the archway up here. Again, let's hide that background, and let's go ahead and create some decorative pieces here. And it doesn't have to be anything too fancy. Again, use our pencil tool, and we're just going to bring that maybe down to size 2 here, and I'm just going to make some rough rocks that are going to go around this just to kind of give it some decoration. Again, doesn't have to look beautiful, it just has to be functional for what we're creating here. And the nice thing is if I really want to, I can of course duplicate these, but they don't have to be an exact duplication. They can have variation between the 2 levels here. So I'm just going to go ahead and add some quick rocks in here again, and you're welcome to go ahead and add a couple of your own design. All right, and that looks pretty good. Now notice mine is not quite centered, so I'm just going to go ahead and switch to my rectangular marquee tool so I can grab the whole thing here. I went a little too far down, and I can just then drag this over just a little bit. So let's just go ahead and use our move tool, move that over. Oh, looks like I missed a little bit of my selection. That's okay. I can also just deselect this if I want and just grab my move tool and move the whole layer as well. And we have a pretty nice archway. We got little decorative pieces. Now let's actually make the actual portcullis part. So again, I'm going to make a new layer here, and I'm just going to call this part the gate. And I'm going to, again, use my pencil tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here, just so I have a little bit better view. And let's just go ahead and draw a straight line down. Actually, zoom out just a little bit here. Let's do a straight line. And this will be the center of the portcullis. Now, I want to maybe have this be a little thicker between the different lines because maybe I want the end to come more to a point. So I might, of course, add some lines here along the side of it. And that will give me a nice line there. And this, of course, gives me one line of this. And what I'm going to do to show the other grates going the other direction is I'm actually going to do the same thing. I'm going to just draw some lines like this. And now that this one piece is done here, we use our quick selection tool to grab this piece here. And all I need to do is duplicate this here. So I'm just going to right click and do layer view copy again. Use my move tool, and I can go ahead and move that so it sits right next to this piece here. I can, of course, have them be overlapping entirely. I can stretch those out to however far I want them to go. I have a lot of flexibility here based upon what I created. Now, notice I only did one single rung here. So if I wanted to duplicate this rung here, it's not that hard for me to go back and use my pencil tool, or even just use my selection tool to try and grab this one area here and duplicate it. But again, because it was something pretty simple for me to do, I'm just going to go ahead and use my pencil tool. Go ahead and make this center here. Duplicate it so that you have enough bars to cover this entire front. And I'll come back so we can get to the part where we start making the animation. Alright, so I went ahead and made all my different layers here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and merge all these different layers here. So the easiest way to do that is, of course, to merge them. And so I'm just going to go ahead and merge those layers and rename this back into the gate. Now, one thing you will notice, of course, is that the gate itself is on top of our archway. And so we want that to be the other way around. So I'm going to put the archway on top of the gate. And it is really hard to kind of see where everything is in relation to everything because, again, we have these different colors here. Now, you will see that the gate itself is currently bleeding through all these pieces here. And that's because we didn't color these bricks here. So I'm just going to go ahead and real quickly go ahead and grab my paint bucket tool. And let's just go ahead and choose kind of a grayish tone here. And I'm just going to go ahead and real quick go ahead and just paint these bricks here. Just so that way we have a little bit of background here for us to have for this. And now when we go ahead and add our gate back on, one thing you should notice is that it is now hidden behind here. All right, that looks pretty good. And oh, looks like I missed a small pixel right there. There we go. And if I put my background on, you'll see, of course, the background is going through this entire piece here, but that's okay for us right now. What we want to do right now is focus on animating the gateway. So if you remember, we recently talked about layer groups. So I want to take both the archway and the gate and put them inside their own group. And so you see in group 1, now I have archway and gate. So if I double click this, let's go and call this frame 1. And so we know this will be our first frame of animation, is where this gate is down. Now we of course probably want this gate to go up and we want to come back down. So let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and I'm going to pause the video. When we come back, I want you to go ahead and have enough layer groups so that the gate is going to go up and the gate is going to come back down. And welcome back. So at this point, I've gone ahead and created 12 different frames of animation. You might have more, you might have less, but as we go through these different frames, you will see that as these rise, you can see that we have a steady change in our animation. Now, one thing you will note that as we kind of move up, we do have the issue of our gate kind of exceeding things here outside of this. And the reason for that is because we have nothing to kind of sit over top of that. And that's where our background layer is going to come into play here. Now, the problem is with our background layers, we want it to be visible in this space here, but we don't want it to be, in certain other areas. So for example, we wanted to cover here, this we want transparent. So the easiest way to do that, let's go back to frame number 1. And in frame 1, if we expand that and go to our archway, I'm just going to hide the gate for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and use my quick select tool. Let's go ahead and expand that up a little bit just so it's a little bit larger. And let's go ahead and try to grab that whole gateway. And so now we've done that. You can see we have that selection done. And I'm going to inverse that selection. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go ahead and just hit the delete key and make sure I'm on the background layer here. So let's make sure I'm background, hit the delete key. And it's going to ask us to fill. That's not what we want here. We don't want to fill with anything here. So that's because at this point our background is locked. So let's just go ahead and unlock that background. And now if we hit the delete key, you can see we now have a transparent layer. Now this could have been done just by leaving a transparent layer in here. But what I want to do now is I want to fill this selection. But I don't want to fill what's inside the archway. I want that to stay transparent. So as we start moving our different pieces around, we can. So let's just go ahead and grab our fill bucket tool for now. And let's just go ahead and fill that in with a solid color. We can go ahead and pick any color. But since we kind of have a stone theme, I'm just going to use a bit of a darker gray here. And I'm going to go ahead and fill that in up here. And you'll notice it does not touch the area in here, which is what we want because I did not have any pixels running out into this zone. And of course, I can recolor this layer to a gradient, or if I want to make it more vibrant, I can do so. I just wanted something for now just to act as a mask here. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this now from background to, let's just call this background mask, because that's effectively what this layer is doing. All right, and let's turn our gate back on here. And one of the things we're going to want to do is we want to make sure that this background mask is pretty much effectively always going to be present over these zones. And if I take this background mask, for example, and I move it above frame 1, you will see that it also now includes this selection here. We have a problem here. Our background mask is including this zone here. And that's because when we made that background mask, so let me just go ahead and move that up. We did not deselect this region here. So let's just take that back out here for a second. And we want to make sure when we do our selection, so let's go back to our selection tool. Let's do select and let's do inverse. We want to make sure here on our background mask, we delete that section as well. And we want that to be in, so it's always visible. So if I hit that delete key with that selected and I drag that back above frame 1, you will see that I accidentally put it into frame 1. But if I put it above frame 1, you will see that I still always see this other layer here. And if I actually now can take this background mask, I'm actually going to drag that all the way up to the very top here. So it's above all my other frames. So no matter which frame I'm on, I'm always going to have that mask present here. Let's go ahead and Control D to deselect, and let's get ready to start putting together animation. So let's go ahead and create a frame animation here. And notice that it's always going to have the background mask on. Let's start first with frame 1. And let's go ahead and create this for as many frames as we have. So we have 12 frames of animation. So I'm going to create 12 frames here. And so obviously we know this routine. So I do frame 1, frame 2, etc. so on and so forth. Now one thing I do want to point out here is with my animation, you might have done it just a little different in yours, is that I only created animations effectively up until the point where the animation is stopping at the top of the cycle. You'll see that my animation does not necessarily go back down. And there's a reason why I did that. And that, if you remember, we had talked before about the different types of animations. We had straight through and pose to pose. And this is kind of more of that example of a pose to pose animation, because I know this gate is going to be coming back down. I don't need to draw all those frames again. Instead, what I'm going to do is once this gate comes up, so if I play my animation, you can see it goes up, it looks great. But you notice it kind of slams itself right back down. If I want that gate to come down slowly, it's very easy to do. If I want to add this now moving in reverse, I can now just add another frame, for example, and I can go in reverse. I can do frame 11, frame 10, just to give you a couple quick ones here just to see how that works. Let me just go ahead and play that from the start. So as it goes up, and you can see it starts going back down. So what I want you to do in your animation is go ahead and finish animating this out. so that way you can have the rest of your animations in effect here. But I want you to have your portcullis not simply just animate up, but also animate back down in a smooth manner, just like we're going to have here. And with that being said, folks, hopefully you've had some fun with this challenge. And when we come back next time, we're actually going to make some adjustments to this animation, so that way we can have an animation that is much more dynamic and is not necessarily simply just a smooth animation. Because if you notice right now, when we play it, it goes up, goes back down, goes up, goes back down. So we're actually going to look at some ways to build in some built-in natural pauses with our animation.